Welcome back to Just Jossin. It's me, Sabrina Hannon, and
And I'm Jasmine Heron. Today we're coming at you with the episodes 3 through 7 of season 1 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. That is including The Witch, Teacher's Pet, Never Kill a Boy on the First Date, The Pack, and then we're going to end up with Angel.
mhm. So starting off with the witch. This is the one all about cheerleading. Well, not all about cheerleading, but that's what the premise begins on. I'm sorry, the Scarlet kitty cat is jumping all over my notes. Okay. So I like that they started off this way with the witch because Buffy was a cheerleader at our old school, which anyone who saw the movie would know. So that's a nice tie-in, even though it's still not the correct grade or anything like that.
Yeah. And so for that, it was really kind of transitioning the idea of what was a very kind of ditzy and shallow, superficial Buffy into her role as the Slayer, which is, the weight of the world is upon her shoulders. And so, with the opening of Giles really coming down on her, saying, you've joined this cult, like you have all these responsibilities and you've joined this cult. And then you just see her standing there with her pom-poms.
Mm-hmm.
So, I really liked that they still, hearkened to that part of the movie and that part of her life without her being so, tied.
Stupid.
Yes. Ditzy, stupid, whatever we want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
I love because you really see a lot of contrast between Cordelia
Mm-hmm.
and Cordelia's attitude, which is very similar to what Buffy's attitude was originally in the movie. And then moving forward from that to, how Buffy is now.
Definitely.
And of course, I love the fact that during tryouts, she's coming down on, oh, what does she think she is, a Laker girl? And Charisma Carpenter started off as a professional cheerleader.
Yep. And I think probably the most important thing about this episode is that they introduced the character of Amy, which you don't know for the rest of season 1 that means anything. But, seasons upon seasons later, it becomes important again.
And so a lot of times writers will talk about a Monster of the Week episode versus an arc episode. And so this actually originated from The Outer Limits back in 1963. So the Twilight Zone was running at the same time as The Outer Limits, and they wanted to kind of like distance themselves from it. So they promised a new monster every week. And so the writers in the writer room would talk about what's the monster of the week, what's the new monster of the week. And that actually became part of the lexicon for a lot of sci-fi and horror genre TV shows. And so like other ones when I'll talk about the villain of the week or as opposed to the big bad. But what's kind of interesting is that when you have a Monster of the Week episode, sometimes you think you've got a Monster of the Week episode, but there are little bits snuck in that will like go later into revealing themselves into being arc episodes. And so The Witch, I felt, seems like a Monster of the Week episode, except you meet Amy, and Amy becomes more than just, a one-off character or, a named background character. She becomes a deeper presence.
Oh, yeah. And I feel like with a lot of the Monster of the Week ones, the ones that like don't have like a deeper meaning behind them, like some of the other ones in season 1 do, they're introducing important characters that won't be killed off within an episode or two. Like even when we get to the puppet show, you get Principal Snyder out of that, and he's with us for quite some time, and he is a very interesting character.
Yes. Yeah, I do think that Joss is really into world building,
Mm-hmm.
where it's not just, here are my core people and everyone else is a faceless nobody behind. He really develops a world where the same faces show up and their lives and their background is, developing behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm. And not just like, I would even argue not just with the characters on screen, the actors who play them, everyone knows, like, you will find Nathan Fillion in Firefly and in Buffy. You'll find various actors throughout his work. Faith, I mean, that's someone who pops up in the Dollhouse.
Yep.
I mean, she stars in it, not just pops up, but he's known for, you know, making sure his actors have jobs for years to come, basically.
Yeah. When we're facing the witch, this really, we had just exited the harvest, where Giles is coming off of his little high of, there's all sorts of, goblins and beasties that we could be facing because we're on a Hellmouth.
Mm-hmm.
And then we immediately pop into the witch, and the first thing we come across is not a vampire. It's another Hellmouthy thing.
Yes. And I like that they did like a twist on Freaky Friday with it, where like the mom's a jerk and does this against her daughter's will. Because I think there are definitely people who have that experience, not that their parents snatched their bodies, but that we went to high school with someone whose parents came down on them all the time for not being a cheerleader, for not hanging out with the kind of crowds that they hung out with, just being really narcissistic and seeing their child as an extension of themselves.
Yes. And I kind of thought it was interesting the way that Amy, as her mother, referred to her mother. She was Catherine the Great. She was, and it's all, Amy's mother in Amy's body, telling other people about Catherine the way that Catherine wished that she was still being seen or had been seen.
Yeah. When clearly she's been forgotten. Like,
yes.
Nobody knows about that trophy in that case until she points it out.
Yep.
I do love, though, that the giveaway that it's Amy in her mother's body is that she's sitting there eating brownies.
Yes. Yep. And there's times when you're like, oh, is Amy the bad person? Is she? And then you kind of realize when Amy comes home and she pauses on the stairs and she's like, where are you? And it's this creepy, like you can sense she becomes predatory.
Yeah, that actress did a great job.
Mm.
Also, I love that Xander gave Buffy that really bizarre bracelet.
Yes.
What was it? Yours always?
Yours always. And he goes, oh, it came that way.
They all do. Just like, And then Buffy does not catch on to this, as we know, when she's like in her weird magic drug state. And she says, like, any other boy who gave me a bracelet want to date me, but you don't. You're my Xander-shaped friend.
Well, and that was the total flip from earlier, where you've got this budding romance or crush with Willow and Xander. And Xander says to Willow, you're like a guy.
Yep.
You're my guy that understands girls. And then Buffy flips that right on him, and she's like, you're like one of the girls. And he realizes, like, ouch.
Yeah, I don't think he makes comments like that after that to Willow. Well, later on when he's possessed a little bit, but otherwise, not so much.
Xander has a lot of growing to do throughout the series. And he's written that way, but I also feel like it was a commentary of the times. That a lot of boys kind of talked that way. And now I feel like if boys were to talk that way, there would be more, blowback or confrontation from the people they were talking to. Whereas when he was saying this in the 90s, that was, yep, I'm just one of the guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's even so Xander's character is still like a marked upshot from where they had been in the movie, like the
Yes.
male characters. He's much more feminist friendly. It's not a feminist by any means, but much more not an asshole.
Well, okay, so I feel like when you're watching the movie, those were stereotypical boys to the extreme of not being relatable.
I hope.
They were campy.
Mm-hmm.
And Xander has those undertones, but he's more realistic. Although there are a few times where he's less realistic, but he's more realistic. I was having the skateboard moment from the first episode.
Mm-hmm. Although he did have a one of those wallets with a chain on it, which we know were popular through the 90s and well into the 2000s.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I have no idea if they still are or not, but
yeah, that might also be a generational thing. We need to look back and ask the younger generations.
Oh yeah, it's true. One thing I also like when they were doing the dissections of the frog, getting the eye of Newt in the science lab, I got really excited because I was like, hey, we did frog dissection sophomore year of high school too.
Mm-hmm.
Like keeping it real here.
Did you know that eye of Newt is actually mustard seed?
I did not.
All of those things that you hear about, like, eye of Newt and toe of frog and stuff like that, they're all plants. They're all plants and herbs. And that was just the colloquial terms for them. So it's like a dash of mustard seed, a buttercup, a little bit of lavender. Instead of saying that, they're like eye of Newt and toe of frog, and bane of wolf is wolf's bane, which I'm pretty sure is buttercups. Like,
I also found it funny that like when they have the big showdown at the end, where Catherine the Great is back in her body. Well, she gets put back in her body, but they're doing these spells in the science lab. That just tickles me. That it's that nice little crossover, because there's quite a few times where they go to do spells and they head to the science lab to do it, which makes sense because it's a place with all of the beakers.
You think it was interesting how they had the different tracks? Did you have anything like that in school? Because I didn't. It was basically everybody was learning the exact same thing at the exact same time, and you were doing your labs. It was the exact same thing at the exact same time.
So they had different tracks, but they were in different periods, because there was I think it was first, second, and third level. And third level was for kids with like learning disabilities and things like that. Second was like your regular class, and then first was honors.
Well, I mean, so we had that too, but not in the same
classroom. Yeah, that's bizarre. Unless Sunnydale High is a very small.
Students do this. Biology students do this.
Yeah, the only like it was Little House on the Prairie-esque style. The only thing I can think is maybe they're trying to say that their school is just so small.
Yeah.
Maybe because all the students keep getting murdered.
Yes, students keep getting murdered.
Mm-hmm. It's a real problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably why it's so cheap to buy a house in Sunnydale, as Xander points out.
Yes. Yep. And so we get through, and we're talking about, actresses. The actress who plays Catherine, or Amy in Catherine's body, I think is the way I want to say it. She's amazing too, because she goes from being, sweet and awkward and like, oh, like, no, I'm really Catherine, to revealing herself as Amy. And then later as Catherine again.
Yeah. Where she's basically like breathing fire.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Is there anything else you really want to touch on the witch?
No, I really feel like the important things that we touched on there is this was our first, both, monster of the week and arc storyline kind of combined.
Yeah.
And this really, sets us up towards, building the world.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go right into Teacher's Pet, which is a complete monster of the week, all rolled up into one little package story.
It is, but it's one of the ones, I think it's the first one that has like a moral to it. Like, here's a moral in one episode, here you go. Like, because we know if that had been a female student and a male teacher, it would have been looked at very differently.
Oh, yeah.
Very differently. And that's not okay. Like, just because you're a woman doesn't mean that you can prey upon young boys.
Mm-hmm.
Or
so
teenage
Xander
boys.
is 15, maybe 16 in this? Because
Yeah.
he's sophomore.
Yeah.
And there's this, 30-something, maybe even 40-something-year-old woman
Mm-hmm.
preying on him. No, not okay. Although, again, at that time, deemed much more socially acceptable than the other way around. I do like that the original teacher, the original science teacher, keeps Buffy after and inspires her. And there is no creepy old man mentor thing there. I really am so grateful they took that away with Giles in the first episode. Where he was leaning over Buffy's shoulder. They stepped that right back towards fatherly very quickly, thankfully.
And I think it was just like, I think what they were going for is more like an awkward guy who's not really around people so much. But once they saw it on screen, they were like, oh, okay, no.
Yeah, like that's weird. Let's nix that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so she's got this teacher, and he says, "What I'm excited to see what you're going to do here. I'm sure it's going to be great."
Yep.
And I mean, I worked in academia for a while, and I would oftentimes see these students who had so much potential if they could just channel it in the right direction. And so to see, Buffy with her colorful background and just say, no, like you can do so much stuff, but do your homework.
Yeah. And I think it was with this episode that I realized, other than Giles in the first season and I think the second season, any teacher that bothers to get close to Buffy or says anything nice about her, or guidance counselor, dies soon thereafter.
Yep.
Things I liked about Teacher's Pet, when it opens up, it's that scene where Xander has kind of become like, Buffy's still the Slayer, but he is also the Slayer type thing. And I was just like, oh, this is cool. It's a guy wanting to be the female superhero. Which I really got a kick out of, because you never see that. It's always the other way around. I mean, he's doing it to impress her, granted, but
I mean, it's such a sex dream.
Yes.
Like what he's having is such a sex dream where she's like, "You hurt your hand," and he's like, "Let me go finish my guitar solo." Hey, it is the high school boy fantasy of having everybody looking. You know what? I don't even want to say high school boy.
I was gonna say, I don't think that's just a high school boy thing.
I think this is just a high school fantasy of being cool and being admired, and the one that you have a crush on just being swept away by your utter coolness. And does he even play guitar? No. Has he even touched a guitar? Like,
no, not before nor after does he ever pick up any sort of instrument. But no, you're completely right about that. But I still like the fact that he was trying to be the female, like, superhero, basically. In that this pedophile, what is the word I'm looking for? Pedophile is one of them, yes, but predator, there we go. She turns out to be an actual predator who wants to mate with him and then kill him. And I think that's a very good analogy.
Yeah, yes. So I had questions about the physicality of it. Like, you know, with praying mantises, the female lays her eggs, and then the male fertilizes it. And
Yeah,
then,
that was...
And I'm like, I actually don't think that's the way it works. Isn't it that she creates a nest, then she mates with the male, and then she bites off his head, but she's like fertilizing internally? Or doesn't she fertilize?
Either way, even if she has created these eggs, how is he going to fertilize them if they're like outside her body? There's no need to mate with him at that point.
Just have him like jerk off over him.
Yeah, exactly. So that whole part doesn't really make sense. Maybe they didn't want to say have him jerk off over the egg.
Like, yeah, I think the writers maybe needed to do a little bit more research. And so, again, this is a Monster of the Week episode, but of course they have that little flash at the end where you see the eggs in the science room, tucked away out of sight, and you never see them again.
Yeah.
Never. There's no baby she mantises running around anywhere. One of the things I like is that this has more character development for Cordelia, where Cordelia again comes in with her, you know, I need my special food, her special lunch, her medical lunch. Yeah. And then she opens up the fridge and there's a dead body inside. And she's like, I lost like 3/4 of an ounce, or like 7 ounces or something like that. Mm-hmm. And she's saying, you know, that not that we should kill a teacher a week for my diet, but again, you see like these flashes of the side character who's just kind of in the outer orbit.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of a character in the outer orbit, we do see Angel again in this, oh so briefly.
Uh-huh.
As every, you know, person who's attracted to men, as he pops up, just goes, swoon. He gives her his jacket, and the next day she shows up in school still wearing that jacket.
Yep.
And I was just like,
which is very different than the weird jacket he was wearing before. His like
crushed velvet
crush one.
He still looked good in it. David Boreanaz could pull that off.
Yep.
100%. Oh, this is also the first time we see alcohol ever consumed.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing good happens. The person is drugged.
Yeah.
The person being Xander, obviously.
Yes. And you're again, 15-year-old boy, and she's like, martini? Mm-hmm. And he's like, oh, that's a martini, you know. Oh, and
mm-hmm. And then he downs it.
And then he downs it, and he's drugged.
Yep. Yeah, I saw him do that, and I was like, ugh. I'm not a martini, like dry martini fan like that, and that looked like a dry martini to me, and I was like, that wouldn't even taste good.
I am not really an alcohol connoisseur. I like my alcohol to taste like candy. Mm-hmm. So, some fruity, delicious candy. So I couldn't imagine just, you know, throwing something like that back.
Yeah.
Although, possibly it happened anyways because she was so intimidating. You know, she's really kind of pressuring him into feeling uncomfortable on purpose.
Oh, yeah.
She's making him uncomfortable on purpose so that he takes the drugs so that she can continue to take advantage of him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's something, she says something or another that is very sexual and puts him not at ease. And that's when he goes, huh, and down the whole thing.
So I love that, you know, Angel's making this really big deal about Fork Guy. And he's like, he's coming. And then by the end of the episode, Buffy's just like, boom, you know, got him all tied up, and he is not an issue for her. And, you know, Angel was shoulder skewered.
Mm-hmm.
this season introduced a lot of like random vampires that are supposed to be bigger than they end up being. So, for example, if we jump ahead to Angel, the Three, and we've got the Order of Aurelius, and it's just
with the Three. I mean, they are not defeated by Buffy and Angel. They're outsmarted. But I mean, who knows what would happen if they got a second crack at them if the Master hadn't killed them off.
Yeah, but again, it's like these vampires all have names for themselves.
Yeah.
And it's just, here it is in my Watchers book, the Three. Oh, here it is, stars and sun, the Order of Aurelius.
Mm-hmm.
And then
poor guy.
But they were like, there was this guy that cleaved off his hand because he'd failed the Master and replaced it with fork or skewer. A couple of things that I've noticed that it changes later in other seasons is that there are item drops in this season. Like, have you ever played a game where you defeat like a bad guy and then they drop an item?
Oh yeah.
That you can pick up?
Mm-hmm.
And there are multiple times in this season where, instead of them being entirely dusted, they're entirely dusted except for this ring or their claw hand.
Mm-hmm. Just something fun to hang on to.
Yep. And it's like, what makes something impervious to dusting?
Yeah, because their clothes go.
Yep. And then some of them, have earrings or chainmail even.
Yeah.
Like the chainmail goes away, but the ring stays. So.
Maybe the ring is enchanted. I'm sure that's what Giles would say.
And then the claw hand is enchanted too.
The claw hand has many special abilities that we are unaware of. Never kill a boy on the first date? That kind of moving on?
Yes, that kind of moving on.
Okay.
So Never Kill a Boy on the First Date, you would think would be a Monster of the Week episode, and it's not. It is full-on arc episode.
Mm-hmm.
And so you start with, Buffy being all swoony over Oweny, the Owen, the Owenest of Owens.
Mm-hmm. He's a cutie. He's a cutie.
Yeah, I guess. And he never. Does he show up ever again?
I don't think so.
Like, does he just go off and get himself killed later in another season?
Probably. I mean, Sunnydale High has a very high mortality rate for their students and for their teachers.
Yes. And she's like kind of swooning over him and she wants to go on a date. She says she needs a specific book. And Giles is like, hey, we've got this prophecy coming up, the anointed one, and it should be tonight. And, so she has to go sit in a graveyard waiting for the anointed one. And of course, you see this airport transport, I guess is what it was, like a transport van.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got this like crazy murderer guy who is all fire and brimstone, and then the little boy and I'm guessing his mom, and the Order of Aurelius like stops the van. So it wasn't really a car crash because they attack the van.
They got them to swerve off the road by making them think they're going to cause an accident, which causes the accident.
So you kind of get these cutscenes with the Master, and the Master reading his stories. And so with this one, this is the Order of Aurelius. They punish the one guy, something in your eye. Is that?
Oh yeah.
And he's thinking, oh, and someone couldn't wait to, to do their job. Who couldn't wait to eat till after like their job? So they got slain by, the Slayer, and so the Slayer knows he's coming. And again, I'm talking about these random vampires that could almost be interchangeable. You've got the Order of Aurelius, and then you've got the Three, and and they serve very similar roles of just being these like generic vamps.
Yeah, henchmen.
Yep, vampire henchmen.
Specifically to the master. Which which I think just really goes to build who he is as like the master, to show his power, even though he's been stuck in the ground for 100 years or something like that.
And he's definitely got a cult following. And he seems, I mean, not just as a master, but he seems very much to be like a pastoral figure, where he has, his children, my favorite ones.
So all those like vamps really go to help build up who the master is, and you're completely right about like he has his little flock, and it's definitely like staggered with his favorites.
And Luke's gone.
Yep.
And Darla is kind of around, but you're seeing her less, and she's less little schoolgirly than she was in the first couple of episodes.
Yeah. And
so you have the Order of Aurelius, and they chase Giles. So Giles goes by himself because date number 2, or first date, take 2.
Yep, because she walks in and sees Owen dancing with Cordelia, looking very uncomfortable. This is the episode where where she says the apocalypse is coming, or if the apocalypse comes, beep me, and pulls out a beeper, which no one born in the 2000s will have any idea what a beeper is.
Yup. When I actually got to grad school, they had problems with employees using like cell phones for personal calls and not just work calls. And so our entire staff had work beepers for when we were on call. And now I feel like the only ones who have beepers at this point in the world are doctors and drug dealers.
Yeah. I didn't even know they still sold them.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is also the first time that Giles ever patrols with Buffy that we see.
And is training her. So in the movie, you see Merrick like watching her when she's patrolling and judging her, like not, but giving her pointers or critiques.
Yeah.
And Giles is just like, nope, sloppy. Look at this, and too much talk and not enough slayage.
Which is something Buffy. I mean, I don't think it's too much talk, but she definitely talks more probably than other Slayers to her upcoming slayee.
Yes. So he goes by himself to the funeral home and gets attacked by the Order of Aurelius. And he says, I got chased in, and then he hides with a body. And by the time that Willow and Xander get back with Owen and Buffy, there's the whole thing we can go back to later with Angel and Cordelia and that whole thing. But by the time that he arrives, the Order is pretty much gone. They've disappeared, and they're like, well, where's the Anointed One? And so they think the Anointed One is this crazy murderer that's turned vampire. But he was left behind. The Order just was like, we turned him. He's a crazy guy. Peace. And they took the one that mattered, and that doesn't like sync.
Yeah.
With the Scoobies for what is happening.
Yeah. No. I mean, in reality, I guess like, since you've just gone through this very traumatic experience of almost dying, if you're Giles and Willow, the ones who do a lot of the thinking, you might not put that together. But it's definitely something that I feel like if it had happened in a later season, they would have been all over.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see errors like that in their judgment
Yep.
later.
Yep. Okay, so going back to the bronze, why did we not have a bronze in our hometown?
We had the teen center.
Yes, we had a teen center.
Yeah.
But so we go back to the bronze, and Cordelia walks in and she sees Buffy with Owen on their actual date. And Owen has made it very clear from the start that he is interested in Buffy and not Cordelia.
Yeah, even at that lunch table when Cordelia like knocks the tray out of Buffy's hands and sits
Mm-hmm.
down and she's like, I'm gonna be at the bronze. And he's like, who else is going? Will you be there, Buffy? She's like, Buffy?
Yep. Yeah, and she's like, who else matters? And he's like, Buffy? And Buffy says yes. And so, that happens, and she sees Buffy and Owen, and she goes, look at you, all alone. And he's like, here with Buffy. And she goes, oh, okay. Do you want to dance? And he's like, still here with Buffy. And I give so much props to Owen for not even playing that game with her, like not even messing around. It's very much, this is my date. I'm not interested in you. This is the person I'm interested in.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course, Cordelia sets sights on Angel, and Angel is all about Buffy too.
I love the line that she says about Buffy, like when Owen and Buffy are standing like, I don't know, 2 feet apart talking. And she's like, I've never seen someone throw themselves at a man like that before, so shamelessly. And then Angel walks in and she says like, this guy's gonna need oxygen when I'm done with him, and like it starts to trace after him. And I was just like, oh my. I mean, good for her for having confidence. She should have a little less. Just a little.
Yep.
But yeah, that's probably the funniest moment I think in the whole
And again,
episode.
how old is Cordelia supposed to be? 15? 16? I think 16 because she's taking driver's ed.
Yeah.
So 16 years old, and like that's the way that she's acting. And
yeah.
So again, so we go through all of this, and Buffy thinks that she's killed the Anointed One, and score 1 for her. And she recognizes that she cannot bring Owen into her world because Owen was so thrilled with the fight.
Mm-hmm.
She realized that he would not be safe the way that Xander and Willow and Giles are safe.
Yeah.
And this is one of the first times where Buffy kind of feels the weight of being the Slayer as it affects her social life. And she's like, I want a social life and I want to be the Slayer, or I have to be the Slayer and I want to have a social life. I want to be able to do both, but she recognizes that not everything is going to be afforded to her because of the real dangers that come with her life and with her world.
Mm-hmm. And especially someone who finds that world sexy and alluring.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Emily Dickinson might have been a tip-off. Shows that she never read Dickinson, but
yeah. So, and this is one of the smaller bonding moments with Giles, where you get a little bit of backstory from Giles, where his father was a watcher and his grandmother was a watcher.
Yeah.
And he was like, I learned that this was my destiny, that I would be a watcher. And so that also kind of gives a little bit of, like background world building of there's a line of watchers and, like passed along from parent to child sort of thing, and you get trained into it. Mm-hmm. And so like he learned that his life would never be the same, and that there are certain sacrifices that come with it. And Buffy has that, that little bonding moment.
Yeah. There was another thing about this episode that upset me. So the crazy murder guy, before he comes up as a vampire in the funeral home, when Owen opens that curtain and it opens to that room,
Uh-huh.
who the hell just left a body laying out, not in like a freezer?
Yeah.
Like, just let them laying out there with a sheet over them.
Yep.
Like, what is that? Someone
Well,
should get fired.
so that's supposed to be the observation room,
Yeah.
right? And so I was wondering, is the observation room itself supposed to be chilled?
I don't know. Because I
Like,
mean, there were like flowers and stuff in there. Um, but like he would have had to have been like embalmed and everything.
yeah.
And I don't know what happens if a vampire is embalmed, like, and their organs are removed. Can you slay them then? Where's their heart? It's gone.
Good point. Yeah, so you've got, the observation room is basically for the identification of bodies, usually that have died in some sort of way that you need to have the person identified, without going into the same room. And so sometimes, at least in my limited experience, like the morgues or the police will actually bring you into the room, but other times they are behind glass and they
Yeah.
kind of say like, here you go, take a look. Can you identify this body?
He had been identified though, because he was in the paper that he
Yes.
was one
And
of them.
so I'm wondering if that he was left out from like for the police investigation or whatever. If they were like, well, we need to do a little bit more work of collecting forensics to see whether or not he is our murderer.
Hmm.
Check underneath the fingernails, or I'm sure there's some kind of meta backstory for why he was just in a sheet in a room.
Hmm. Instead of being put away, you always put your toys away,
Yep. Well,
or they'll turn into vampires and kill you.
you don't
Children.
know. Maybe the Order of Aurelius came in and killed the guy before he could do an autopsy.
That's a possibility.
Not coroner guy is in there getting ready to do his thing, and Order of Aurelius comes and steals the kid's body and eats him along the way. They're like, ooh, snap.
Mm,
And so like he was getting prepped to like go put away the other body, and
that makes sense to me. I accept that answer.
and snack.
Hmm. Yeah. No, I accept that answer. Although I still have questions about the people who were embalmed.
Yes, I follow that. I would like to know in the Buffyverse what happens when a person has been embalmed.
Yeah.
And again, because there have been episodes in future episodes where people are, murdered by vampires, and then they go to the funeral, and you don't have the funeral or the open casket funeral without having done the embalming thing.
Hmm. Yeah, because it's real gross otherwise.
Have to find out some way to like pose these questions to some kind of expert.
Right? We'll just spam Joss Whedon. Tell us.
Hell, explain to us.
He's probably gonna be like, oh God, more of these people.
So then we have our major arc episode, Never Kill a Boy, and then we go to the pack.
Yes. It points out very clearly that Dodgeball is evil, which we all knew. We can all get on that same page. But I like that Buffy is the one that's like, no, this isn't normal teenage boy behavior, when Giles and Willow are like ready to give up on Xander, and she's like, no, this is not my friend. Like, something weird is going on here. And it's really only because she's pressing that issue that Xander is saved in the end.
Mm-hmm. So there's the predatory act, which ends up not really, I mean, there's a bit of predatory, but then there's also, I would say, an act of dominance, because Xander was not being predatory towards the other pack members, he was displaying dominance by trying to protect their victim, and yet he still gets looked in. And so I think that they said predatory act, but I feel like it was more act of dominance or display of dominance than.
After rewatching this episode, I'm pretty sure that Xander's actually the pack leader, because he has a superior sense of smell, hearing, and they listen to him when he's like dogs, as for hot dogs over here, or like when he smells other things. Eventually, that piggy, they follow him.
Yep, which hyenas are actually matriarchal. So, you know, they were like, oh, no, hyenas are a matriarchal society. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But, and the pack was like paired off, and Xander didn't have his mate.
Yeah.
And so he is actively seeking out a strong
Buffy.
female.
Buffy.
Yeah. But I mean, I do also think, though, that even if he had not had a crush on Buffy pre-possession, he would be seeking out a strong, dominant female.
Yeah.
Like, to pursue, as opposed to everyone else that he would assume as being prey.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Because I think the only other one that has like a really strong personality and is not physically strong, but the strong personality would be Cordelia.
Yep.
One more so builds the friendship, I think, between Xander and Buffy, in my mind anyway. Because, as I said, like everybody else is just like, yeah, he's just being a boy. And
hormones.
Yeah, and it's really out of Xander's wheelhouse to be that mean and that cruel to other people.
I feel like he has the capability of being that mean or cruel, and he shows it a few times where he can kind of lash out when he doesn't get his way. But I feel like it was just so extreme and exacerbated with the pack mentality.
He would never go out of his way and hurt Willow like that, or get her out in dodgeball even.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine, like, because I remember playing dodgeball. It's horrendous, and I can only imagine if your friend and the boy you like hits you with that ball.
And he pelts her. It's not just like people are throwing, and he is like lobbing that ball with great force. And you see how hurt she is when he does that to her.
And he just like stares at her.
And they get to the end, and instead of attacking Buffy, because Buffy is the only one on the opposing end, they turn on one of their own that they consider weak. And of course the coach is just standing there being like, yeah, I love this game.
Yeah. And Buffy has to step in. I will say, even though I was just saying like, oh, Buffy's the only one who sticks up for Xander, I do like that they don't have Willow like accepting this behavior from him, that she does not think how he is treating her is okay.
Yeah. She says, what's wrong with you? And then he, goes off on her. And Buffy says there's something wrong with him. And Willow says, but there's also something wrong with me, because he's not treating you this way. Yes, he's acting weird. He's acting weird for both of us, but he's attacking me.
Yeah.
And I think, you see a lot of Willow development, but Willow has this kind of wounded self-esteem persona that she has to kind of push through to develop, where I talk about having this insecurity of, do people treat me badly because I deserve to be treated badly? And I think that is what Willow is encompassing
Mhm.
is there something about me that says that I should be bullied, that says that I should be hurt? And this is something I feel so proud of as Willow comes into her own and becomes one of the strongest, if not the strongest member of, the group.
Yeah.
Yep. That just to go from that, like that little wounded Willow to finding that inner core and inner strength. And also, although she's crying and she's admitting this insecurity to Buffy, she does go say to Xander, like, what's wrong? Like, this is not okay,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think for Willow, a lot of her, I mean, she gets stronger obviously throughout high school, as she encounters all of these life or death situations, and she comes out on top.
Mm-hmm.
And she's contributing to the group. But I think you see a lot of growth in her when she hits college, which is true for so many of us. Like once you break away from, the high school mentality, you see so much personality growth.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I mean, most of us don't become, bisexual or lesbian witches and kind of.
Don't?
I said most. And then go through that dark time where, your eyes go black and whatnot. But
So this again was a Monster of the Week episode,
Mhm.
but there are a few things that do happen that are important towards arc.
Yes.
So one of them being that, we learned that instead of being part of the hogs that she was in the movie, she is now a razorback, which are also pigs or porcine creatures. So you've got the cute little piggy
Mhm.
who gets eaten by the pack, and then we lose Principal Flutie, who was very much not like the principal from the movie, but
Yeah.
like the coach from the movie,
Mhm.
who's
Like, yes.
really.
Mhm.
And we lose Flutie for our next introduction later of Principal Snyder,
Yeah.
who continues.
At least Xander did not eat Principal Flutie. He was busy trying to woo with his alpha male stuff, Buffy.
He trying his hand at felony sexual assault, and Buffy
Yeah.
just knocks him out.
Yep. Yes. And then puts him in a cage.
But we will, of course, talk about later where sexual assault of various forms and sexual vulnerability in various forms shows up throughout the series. Because there are some very controversial times throughout the series where sex and consent and boundaries are challenged. And so we will definitely be touching upon that in future seasons. But
Yeah.
I think it's good to see this, like where he crosses a boundary and the female power to just, say no, and this is because you were possessed. And later we find out that Xander does remember.
Yeah.
And he's so mortified that he pretends it is, an entire haze. It makes me think about sometimes real world situations where men act incredibly inappropriately while intoxicated.
Mm-hmm.
And afterwards are like, oh, I don't remember that, as if it gives them a pass for their incredibly inappropriate behavior while they were intoxicated.
Mm-hmm.
As if, and so you wonder, do they actually not remember, or are they just using that as an excuse so that they don't have to claim ownership of those behaviors or accountability for those behaviors?
I think the creepiest thing that Xander says to Buffy during that whole exchange is, I like it when you're afraid, you smell better.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh.
Oh, and that's the thing, we're going to hear from vampires again in the future too.
Yeah. I don't know, it's creepier though when it's your friend saying it,
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, ugh.
Well, all right. So this takes us, unless you have anything else to talk about in the pack. Although, whatever happens to the pack? Like,
I think they go the way of Owen.
so we see, Flutie's gone, but they assume that it was wild dogs, except for people in the know, in the Hellmouth. No, okay, no, the pack ate them. But what happens to the students? Like, because if they don't have their memories erased, then
Probably all those students too who see vampires and then convince themselves that that's not what they saw. I'm sure that's what they're going with the
they had that horrible dream where they ate the principal.
yeah, I mean, a collective dream at that.
Yep. And so then the final episode we are discussing tonight.
Angel.
So why don't you start us off?
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we've talked about the three quite a bit in this, and the three are being sent to get Buffy. The Masters had quite enough of her and her nonsense. Sends them out to get her, and it may very well have worked because she was only expecting one vamp, and thankfully Angel was stalking her, like straight up stalking her from the bronze, and I think that's who she thinks it is initially behind her, or with like following her around. He comes in, gets his ass kicked a little bit, but it's enough that they can get away from the three and run to Buffy's house. And of course, Joyce comes home and notices that Angel is much older than Buffy. Not as old, like he's much older than she thinks he is. But I like that Buffy quickly realizes that and says, he's a freshman in college. He's my tutor. That was definitely quick thinking, but even she's like, this isn't appropriate.
Yep. Which, good on Joyce for at least having some semblance of, oh, hey, maybe my 15-year-old daughter should not be hanging out with, a 20-some-year-old guy.
Yeah.
24? I think that's how old he was when he was turned.
I think so, yeah. And Joyce is as polite as anyone could possibly be, and being like, good night, sir. And then, Buffy pulls the wool over Joyce's eyes and pretends to send Angel away, when he then just goes up to her bedroom.
Yep. And doesn't Buffy question why he didn't leave during the day? She comes back to her room and he's still there. And
he's like, oh, your mom was home.
Yep. And so we start to see, a bit of, there is that feeling, that sensation. And she's like, oh, what, one bed and two of us, and that won't work. And, they kind of talk a little bit, and there's a little bit of intimacy and crushing going on. Again, I keep going back to, she's a 15-year-old girl.
Yeah. I will say, at least Angel kept his back turned and wasn't trying to look in any mirrors when she was getting changed, unlike Xander, who was trying to position her jewelry box like a creep.
Yep. Although, again, he wouldn't even have to really look in a mirror, because he wouldn't be there. He doesn't want to be around any mirrors, because then she's going to notice no reflection.
Yeah, true.
But he was a gentleman.
Yeah, especially considering what a scoundrel he was in his human life.
Yep. And so we finally get a kind of retcon of Darla, where Darla comes to visit Angel in his apartment, and because vampires can't own apartments, I guess she doesn't need an invitation to get in, because he's not alive.
Yeah.
And he asks her, why are you wearing a Catholic schoolgirl outfit? You are not a little schoolgirl. And she basically alludes to that she's just acting this way because it's fun to dress up and play the part.
Yep. You like?
And she seems to, he says, oh, it was kimonos last time I saw you, which I guess was the Boxer Rebellion. And so you see that, she likes to play roles. And so she was really getting into the role of the schoolgirl. Because I guess after so many years, 400 years, you get bored of just being yourself. So you're like, well, I guess I'm going to get into a little Catholic schoolgirl, like, role play for a bit.
I will say, even, so she comes down on him for living above ground like humans, but even when Angel goes back to being Angelus, he finds a mansion. Like, he's not down with living in sewers. He's bougie.
Yes.
Very bougie. He wants none of that life.
I mean, I wouldn't want to live in sewers either if I could have a nice house with my creature comforts and
right. Keep your blood on ice.
Yep.
Which I guess that keeps it from going bad.
Yeah.
The other thing, this has nothing to do with Angel himself, but when they open up with that fumigation party, I was just like, how is this not shut down by the Department of Health? This happens every year. Like,
pre-fumigation and the post-fumigation party.
But at the pre-one, kids are stepping on cockroaches and handing them over for like a free drink or something.
Yep.
I mean, I remember college, and maybe, I don't even think I would do that though. And
nope.
Like, oh. But getting away from that, the other thing, the other scene, the bronze, which set a very unrealistic expectation for me when I was older and went to clubs and things. When music's playing, they're not screaming at each other to be heard.
Yep.
They can hear each other very, very easily.
Yes.
And I was just like, that is an unrealistic expectation, Joss Whedon. I am not happy about that.
Yep. I wish we had something like the bronze growing up. Or even in college, like something where you can actually hear each other talking, but there's a good musical background going on.
The music's not always good in the bronze, but it's there.
But there's always music going.
Yes, there's always music.
And then apparently you can go in and get alcohol or get virgin drinks, because I don't know if they're
without any X's on your hands.
I know.
Because I remember being like underage and going to places that served alcohol, and you would have like gigantic X's put on your hands.
So that you could not be served.
Exactly. Apparently, that's not a thing in Sunnydale. Everyone's just real cool and doesn't try to drink underage.
Or they don't care if they drink underage.
One way or the other, yes. I mean, they're not shutting them down for cockroaches. Are they going to shut them down for underage drinking? Students are dying already, so let them have a drink.
It's true. They're like, well, there's a pretty high mortality rate. Might as well let them booze it up a little bit before they die.
They probably won't make it to 21.
Oh, poor little Whedonite or Whedonversites.
Yeah. But yeah, so going back to Angel and Buffy, before we see Darla again, that scene, the second night where Angel's in her bedroom, and she thinks he read her diary, and he was like, no. But he does say, like, I don't think I can see you anymore because I always just want to kiss you. And so I'm like, well, I'm glad that I don't know if that makes it worse that you recognize how creepy this is and problematic and then do it anyway. Or, yeah, no, it just makes it worse.
Yep. 240 years old.
Yep.
And 80 years old with his soul.
Yep.
So it's 80 years. He was 24 when he was turned, which means he's 104 years old of souled life. If you allow for the idea that his original Liam soul was returned to him, it's possible that a completely different soul was returned to him. So he has his memories of his life as Liam, and he has his memories of his life as Angelus, and then a soul, but not Liam's soul, has been returned to his body, which is the angel soul.
Yeah. Which might make more sense because Liam was a real dickwad.
And so if that's the case, he's still 80 years old trying to get with a 15-year-old girl. And I am 34, and I see 16-year-old, 17-year-old boys and girls, and all I can think is they are babies.
They're babies.
I can occasionally look and be like, oh, some nice muscles. But I look at them and I think they are babies. They are children. And so the fact that they're trying to make 80 or 240, but we'll be nice and say 80, getting down with a 15-year-old, like, oh, can't get with it. Although, I love me some, like, David Boreanaz. But just the idea, like, the mental idea, I'm like, that's so wrong. Yeah. And like, there are times where they touch upon how old emotionally Angel is.
And even if you toss in, like, how much you would have to emotionally mature as a Slayer, that doesn't equal 80 years. It just doesn't. It might equal 3 years.
Yeah. But again, this is, the timelines. I remember, reading high school romance novels and being like, oh, pitter patter, pitter patter. And now I'm looking at it and I'm like, age those people up, put them in college. That behavior is not okay for a 15-year-old.
Yeah. And have you noticed, like, in vampire-esque books, it's always like a young teenage girl and an old ass vampire male?
Yep. And I guess the idea is that women tend to be more emotionally mature than men.
That's just an excuse that pedophiles use.
Well, I was actually going to say, like, that I think that technically the idea is that men are emotionally stunted in terms of, like, where a 15-year-old woman is not the same as an 18-year-old man. It's that an 18-year-old man or boy is the same as at the age of 15. Like, does that make sense?
I've heard this quite I don't buy it as an adult. I get the idea behind it, but, like, and, like, when people are still in high school, yes, because you're still in that same mentality, right? But once that 18-year-old boy goes on to college, he's now, like, that changes your mindset. That forces you to grow. So
I think that as a society, we make more allowances for men or boys to act irrationally, to act emotionally. And we say, oh, well, boys will be boys. But women are taught from a very early age that their actions and behaviors have consequences. And so they learn to negotiate the societal contract much earlier. If we had those same expectations of men, I think you would end up with more mature levels. But because of that, so I would not say that, like, women are more mature than men
biologically,
and they're ahead of their time. I think that it's allowing for inappropriate behavior for a longer period of time for, men and boys in general.
Yeah. I would definitely agree with that.
And hopefully that is changing, as the, 90s, 2000s have progressed, and we're now in 2020.
The year of fire.
The year of fire. Hopefully future generations are being taught from the start, from the get-go, to negotiate the societal contract maturely and appropriately,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of sex or gender.
Yes. One can only hope.
So we end Angel with Darla has tried to set up this situation where Buffy will kill Angel or Angel will kill Buffy. Mm-hmm. She wants to corrupt Angel back into the fold, to come back with her to be with the Master.
Mm-hmm.
And
oh yeah, because what we didn't say quite yet was that when Buffy and Angel kiss, his face goes all vampire-y. She screams. He jumps out the window. And Joyce comes running in, trying to see what the hell's happening to her daughter.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Darla has a very masterful plan. I want to know how she knew that Angel had been invited in.
Mm-hmm.
So she has to be, I think we're not seeing her for a while because she's busy stalking Angel.
I would imagine so. She wants to get her dear boy back into her life, into her fold.
Mm-hmm.
And so she set up this master plan where she knows that Buffy is with Willow. She knows that, at the library, she knows that Buffy is studying Civil War. And
mm-hmm.
So she's been doing quite a bit of stalking. And has set it up so that she bites Joyce and then lures Angel over. And so Angel ends up in vamp face, staring down at this delicious, is it Christine? What's her name?
Joyce Summers.
Yeah, what's Joyce's?
I have no idea what the actress's name is.
Christine Sutherland.
Mm.
So yeah, seeing that, he's like, okay, and then of course Buffy walks in and he doesn't try to defend himself.
Mm-hmm. He just growls at her.
Yep. And so of course things seem to be fitting right into Darla's little masterful plans, and it isn't until...
Well, I think her plan was actually to have Angel feed on Joyce and have Buffy catch him doing it. And I think even if she didn't catch him doing it, she would have assumed it was him because that's the only vampire she's allowed into her home.
Yeah. I do have to point out, Xander really pissed me off this episode, where he was like, let's think about it. Mm-hmm. He's a vampire. You're a slayer. Kill, kill, kill. He's trying to get
the competition.
Yeah, he's trying to remove the competition by killing the competition, by literally demonizing the competition.
Well, I mean, that's Xander's bag throughout he wants Angel gone for the next 3 years. Even once Angel leaves, Xander doesn't want him coming back.
Yep. So,
but oh, sorry, go ahead.
This is one of the only times I saw a vampire with guns.
Yeah. Yeah, Darla. I really enjoy when Angel tells his story, his backstory to Buffy, and he says the Romani.
Mm-hmm.
He has to clarify because it was the 90s, but he uses the proper name.
Yeah.
Initially. And I also really like that while Joyce is in the hospital, she just thinks that Sunnydale has the best school because Giles is there.
Yep.
Great school.
It's such a great school. And poor Buffy is struggling so hard with history because she's got 3 tutors at this point. She's got Angel and Willow and Darla.
She's probably thinking her daughter has some learning disability that hasn't been diagnosed yet that has to deal solely with history.
Hey, listen, I had the worst time with history but it was just because so many of my history professors were so boring.
No. I always loved history. But yeah, I always loved Darla coming out with the guns and then saying, gonna hit your kneecaps. No fun dancing without those.
Uh-huh. And it does not, I mean, so we later really learn that Darla was Angel's sire.
Yeah.
And that, so they kind of like, he kills her and she goes, Angel? And she's like, you know, surprised and shocked that her offspring, her sire would
Her
kill
sexual offspring.
Hmm?
Her sexual offspring.
Yes, her sexual would kill her, would actually like take that step and betray her in that way.
Mm-hmm.
But we, you know, do not recognize the impact as viewers at the time. Now, years later, I can go back and I can be like, oh shit, like that he was so hard and cold towards her to be like, this is my sire and she will not hurt this Slayer.
Well, you have to figure too, if he has a soul, if that is his initial soul, she ripped his life away from him. And then made him, like, led him down this path where he did horrible, horrible things. So I think once it would be much more shocking, like if it was like if Spike or another vampire were to do that.
Yeah.
What I really thought was interesting was when she dies. It doesn't say that another vampire saw. I mean, they must have, because he knows it was Angel that did it. But the master is distraught. He's destroying everything. Like, he has lost a child. And he says, like, she was my favorite. And then there's the anointed one who is basically his newest child, who's just like, well, now she's gone. I'm your favorite, right?
Mm-hmm.
He was weak.
And it's interesting to see child vampire who doesn't have vamp face. It's literally a child vampire.
Yeah.
Like, they talk about like, oh, he's a child vampire as in he's a new vampire or recently sired, but he is also, an actual child. And what does that mean for his development? Like, your brain hormonally develops in your teen years. Like, you are not fully formed brain mentally wise until around the age of 25. So is he stuck, or would he be stuck perpetually with that like higher impulse control, issues? Or would he possibly develop as a vampire mentally and be an old soul in a young body?
Well, because they stick the idea is that they stick a demon in you basically when you become vampire and your soul leaves. So what I would guess is that the demon is able to mature, because you see that in vampires who are turned younger, like Harmony.
Mm-hmm.
She matures as it goes on. I mean, it's not quite as drastic by any means, but she does mature demon wise.
But they also say that your hidden personalities become more so as you will come across Gay Willow, or Vamp Willow, Doppelgangland Willow.
Yeah.
And so what does that mean for like a small child whose personality traits have not been set yet?
Maybe more mischievous, a mischievous vampire, just what the world needs.
So then we have, the master's raging because he was supposed to have Darla. She was supposed to bring Angel back to him. Angel was supposed to stand by his side. But no. So that's kind of how, and Buffy even offers her neck to Angel, and Angel does not bite. And she's like, well, that's the ultimate proof, that you are good.
I think the ultimate proof is that her mother was there bleeding from the neck in his arms and he didn't take a nibble.
Yep.
Also, so in this episode, they give out Buffy's address, when she calls 911, and I wrote it down because I'm a creep. I was like, 1630 Rubello Drive, Sunnydale, California.
Mm-hmm. And the
Obvious.
next time I think we hear that address
I
is the
think
body.
yeah. It's always her calling 911 for her mom.
Yep. Yep.
Also, I love that Joyce never asks, why the hell is the front window broken?
Mm-hmm.
It's shattered outward, so something was thrown through it. Like, what is she gonna say? Like, I guess vandals came in and that's all they did. House insurance, by the way, in Sunnydale has to be like through the roof.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Nothing, I mean,
Yeah.
business insurance, everything else. Everything's like always on fire.
As a self-employed woman, what kind of health insurance does Joyce have?
Well, she works at an art gallery, doesn't
Yeah,
she?
I thought that she's the one that opened the art gallery. I thought it was her art gallery.
I don't know if she, I don't know if she, because I know they're getting a new exhibit and stuff, but I don't know if she opened it.
I thought that it was her art gallery because when she first moved, she's like, we're looking for a new space. You know, we're looking for a space for the gallery. I thought it was her gallery.
It may have been.
Like,
It may have been.
and that she was using their house as a staging area space and to get shipments in and stuff like that. She talks about battling with the IRS.
Yeah. Well, even long after the gallery is there, new shipments come out of the house all the time, like that one with the mask.
Yep.
I wrote down that quote from Giles. It's like, look at this mask. Isn't it pretty? It raises the dead.
Yep. So that is episodes 3 through 7 of season 1. Is there anything else you want to touch upon? No. All right. Well, thank you for just jossing with me.
Yes. And we will be jossing again next week.
Yep. For episodes 8 through 12, which will help us round out the first season of Buffy.
Yes. Once we get into the second season, we'll probably do it a little bit differently since there's more story to go through and less monsters of the week. And when they do have monsters of the week, there's story arc happening. So,
yep.
All right. Well, till next week.
Till next week.